'tis morning. Let us wander through the fields, where Cimabue found the shepherd boy tracing his idle fancies on the ground, and let us from the top of Fiesole, whence Galileo's glass by night observed the phases of the moon, look round below on Arno's vale, where the dove-coloured steer is ploughing up and down among the vines, while many a careless note is sung aloud, filling the air with sweetness, and on thee, beautiful Florence, all within thy walls, thy groves and gardens, pinnacles and towers, drawn to our feet from that small spire, just caught by the bright ray, the church among the rest by one of old distinguished as the bride, let us in thought pursue, what can we better? Those who assembled there at matin time, who, when vice revelled and along the street tables were set, what time the bearer's bell rang to demand the dead at every door, came out into the meadows, and, a while wandering in idleness, but not in folly, sat down in the high grass and in the shade of many a tree sun-proof, day after day, when all was still and nothing to be heard but the cicala's voice among the olives, relating in a ring, to banish care, their 100 tales. Round the green hill they went, round underneath, first to a splendid house, Garadi, as an old tradition runs, that on the left, just rising from the vale, a place for luxury, the painted rooms, the open galleries and middle court not unprepared, fragrant and gay with flowers, then westward to another, nobler yet, that on the right, now known as the Palmieri, where art with nature vied, a paradise with verdurous walls, and many a trellised walk all rose and jasmine, many a twilight glade crossed by the deer. Then to the Lady's Vale, and the clear lake, that as by magic seemed to lift up to the surface every stone of lust who there, and the diminutive fish innumerable, dropped with crimson and gold, now motionless, now glancing to the sun who has not dwelt on their voluptuous day, the morning banquet by the fountain side, while the small birds rejoiced on every bough, the dance that followed, and the noontide slumber, then the tales told in turn, as round they lay on carpets, the fresh waters murmuring, and the short interval of pleasant talk till supper time, when many a siren voice sung down the stars, and, as they left the sky, the torches, planted in the sparkling grass, and everywhere among the glowing flowers, burnt bright and brighter. He, whose dream it was no more, sleeps in a neighboring vale, sleeps in the church, where, in his ear, I ween, the friar poured out his wondrous catalogue, a ray, imprimis, of the star that shone to the wise men, a vial full of sounds, the musical chimes of the great bells that hung in Solomon's temple, and, though last not least, a feather from the angel Gabriel's wing dropped in the Virgin's chamber. The dark ridge, stretching southeast, conceals it from our sight, not so his lowly roof and scanty farm, his copse and rill, if yet a trace be left, who lived in Valdepesa, suffering long want and neglect and, far, far worse, reproach, with calm, unclouded mind, the glimmering tower on the grey rock beneath, his landmark once, now serves for hours, and points out where he ate his bread with cheerfulness. Who sees him not, 'tis his own sketch, he drew it from himself laden with cages from his shoulder slung, and sallying forth, while yet a morn is grey, to catch a thrush on every lime twig there, or in the wood among his woodcutters, or in the tavern by the highway side at trick-track with the miller, or at night, doffing his rustic suit, and duly clad, entering his closet, and, among his books, among the great of every age and clime, a numerous court, turning to whom he pleased, questioning each why he did this or that, and learning how to overcome the fear of poverty and death. Nearer we hail thy sunny slope, Astri, sung of old for its green wine, dearer to me, to most, as dwelt on by that great astronomer, 7 years a prisoner at the city gate, let in but in his grave clothes. Sacred be his villa, justly was it called the gem. Sacred the lawn, where many a cypress threw its length of shadow, while he watched the stars. Sacred the vineyard, where, while yet his sight glimmered, at blush of morn he dressed his vines, chanting aloud in gaiety of heart some verse of Ariosto. There, unseen, in manly beauty Milton stood before him, gazing with reverent awe. Milton, his guest, just then come forth, all life and enterprise, he in his old age and extremity, blind, at noonday exploring with his staff, his eyes upturned as to the golden sun, his eyeballs idly rolling. Little then did Galileo think whom he received, that in his hand he held the hand of one who could requite him, who would spread his Namio lands and seas, great as himself, nay greater, Milton, as little that in him he saw, as in a glass, what he himself should be, destined so soon to fall on evil days and evil tongues, so soon, alas, to live in darkness, and with dangers compassed round, and solitude. Well pleased, could we pursue the Arno, from his birthplace in the clouds, so near the yellow Tibers, springing up from his four fountains on the Apennine, that mountain ridge a sea mark to the ships, sailing on either sea. Downward he runs, scattering fresh verdure through the desolate wild, down by the city of hermits, and the woods that only echoed to the choral hymn, then through these gardens to the Tuscan sea, reflecting castles, convents, villages, and those great rivals in an elder day, Florence and Pisa, who have given him fame, fame everlasting, but who stained so oft his troubled waters, oft, alas, were seen, when flight, pursuit, and hideous rout were there, hands, clad in gloves of steel, held up imploring, the man, the hero, on his foaming steed borne underneath, already in the realms of darkness. Nor did night or burning noon bring respite. Oft, as that great artist saw, whose pencil had a voice, the cry to arms, and the shrill trumpet, hurried up the bank those who had stolen an hour to breast the ride, and wash from their unharnessed limbs the blood and sweat of battle. Sudden was the rush, violent the tumult, for, already in sight, nearer and nearer yet the danger drew, each every sinew straining, every nerve, each snatching up, and girding, buckling on morion and greave and shirt of twisted mail, as for his life, no more perchance to taste, Arno, the grateful freshness of thy glades, thy waters, where, exulting, he had felt a swimmer's transport, there, alas, to float and welter. Nor between the gusts of war, when flocks were feeding, and the shepherd's pipe gladdened the valley, when, but not unarmed, the sower came forth, and following him that ploughed, threw in the seed, did thy indignant waves escape pollution. Sullen was the splash, heavy and swift the plunge, when they received the key that just had grated on the ear of Ugolino, ever closing up that dismal dungeon thenceforth to be named the Tower of Famine. Once indeed 'twas thine, when many a winter flood, thy tributary, was through its rocky glen rushing, resounding, and thou wert in thy might, to save, restore a charge most precious. To the nearest ford, hastening, a horseman from Arezzo came, careless, impatient of delay, a babe slung in a basket to the knotty staff that lay athwart his saddle bow. He spurs, he enters, and his horse, alarmed, perplexed, halts in the midst. Great is the stir, the strife, and lo, an atom on that dangerous sea, the babe is floating. Fast and far he flies, now tempest-rocked, now whirling round and round, but not to perish. By thy willing waves borne to the shore, among the bulrushes the ark has rested, and unhurt, secure, as on his mother's breast he sleeps within, all peace. Or never had the nations heard that voice so sweet, which still enchants, inspires, that voice, which sung of love, of liberty. Petrarch lay there, and such the images that here spring up forever, in the young kindling poetic fire. Such they that came and clustered round our Milton, when at eve, reclined beside thee, Arno, when at eve, led on by thee, he wandered with delight, framing Ovidian verse, and through thy groves gathering wild myrtle. Such the poet's dreams, yet not such only. For look round and say, where is the ground that did not drink warm blood? The echo that had learnt not to articulate the cry of murder. Fatal was the day to Florence, when, 'twas in a narrow street north of that temple, where the truly great sleep, not unhonored, not unvisited, that temple sacred to the Holy Cross. There is the house, that house of the Donati, towerless, and left long since, but to the last braving assault, all rugged, all embossed below, and still distinguished by the rings of brass, that held in war and festival time their family standards. Fatal was the day to Florence, when, at morn, at the 9th hour, a noble dame in weeds of widowhood, weeds by so many to be worn so soon, stood at her door, and, like a sorceress, flung her dazzling spell. Subtle she was, and rich, rich in a hidden pearl of heavenly light, her daughter's beauty, and too well she knew its virtue. Patiently she stood and watched, nor stood alone, but spoke not. In her breast her purpose lay, and, as a youth passed by, clad for the nuptial rite, she smiled and said, lifting a corner of the maiden's veil, this had I treasured up in secret for thee, this hast thou lost. He gazed and was undone, forgetting, not forgot, he broke the bond, and paid the penalty, losing his life at the bridge foot, and hence a world of woe. Vengeance for vengeance crying, blood for blood, no intermission. Law, that slumbers not, and, like the angel with the flaming sword, sits over all, at once chastising, healing, himself the avenger, went, and every street ran red with mutual slaughter. Though sometimes the young forgot the lesson they had learnt, and loved when they should hate, like thee, Imelda, thee and thy Paolo. When last ye met in that still hour, the heat, the glare was gone, not so the splendor, through the cedar grove radiance streamed like a consuming fire, as though the glorious orb, in its descent, had come and rested there. When last ye met, and thy relentless brothers dragged him forth, it had been well. Hadst thou slept on, Imelda, nor from thy trance of fear awakened, as night fell on that fatal spot, to wish thee dead, to track him by his blood, to search, to find, then fling thee down to catch a word, a look, a sigh, if yet thou couldst. Alas, thou couldst not, and die, unseen, unthought of, from the wound sucking the poison. Yet, when slavery came, worse followed. Genius, valor left the land, indignant, all that it from age to age adorned, ennobled, and headlong they fell, tyrant and slave. For deeds of violence, done in broad day and more than half redeemed by many a great and generous sacrifice of self to others, came the unpledged bull, the stab of the stiletto. Gliding by unnoticed, in slouched hat and muffling cloak, the just discovered, Caravaggio-like, a swarthy cheek, black brow, an eye of flame, the bravo stole, and o'er the shoulder plunged to the heart's core, or from beneath the ribs slanting, a surer path, a summer verd, struck upward, then slunk off, or, if pursued, made for the sanctuary, and there along the glimmering aisle among the worshippers wandered with restless step and jealous look, dropping thick blood, misnamed to lull alarm. In every palace was the laboratory, where he within brewed poisons swift and slow, that scattered terror till all things seemed poisonous, and brave men trembled if a hand held out a nosegay or a letter, while the great drank only from the Venice glass, that broke, that shivered, scattering round it as in scorn. If aught malignant, aught of thine was there, cruel Tophana, and pawned provinces for that miraculous gem, the gem that gave a sign infallible of coming ill, that clouded though the vehicle of death were an invisible perfume. Happy then the guest to whom at sleeping time 'twas said, but in an under voice, a lady's page speaks in no louder, pass not on, the door leads to another which awaits thy coming, one in the floor, now left. Alas, unlocked no eye detects it, lying underfoot, just as thou enterest, at the threshold stone, ready to fall and plunge thee into night and long oblivion in that evil hour where lurked not danger? Through the fairy land no seat of pleasure glittering halfway down, no hunting place, but with some damning spot that will not be washed out. There, at Campagna, where, when the hawks were mewed and evening came, Pulcy would set the table in a roar with his wild lay, there, where the sun descends, and hill and dale are lost, veiled with his beams, the fair Venetian died, and she and her lord, died of a posset drugged by him who sat and saw them suffer, flinging back the charge, the murderer on the murdered. Sobs of grief, sounds inarticulate, dash suddenly stopped, and followed by a struggle and a gasp in death, are heard yet in surtout, along the marble halls and staircases, nightly at 12, and, at the self-same hour, shrieks, such as penetrate the inmost soul, such as awake the innocent babe to long, long wailing, echo through the emptiness of that old den far up among the hills, frowning on him who comes from Pietrarmala. In them, alas, within 5 days and less, 2 unsuspecting victims, passing fair, welcomed with kisses, and slain cruelly, one with a knife, one with the fatal noose. But, lo, the sun is setting, earth and sky one blaze of glory, what we saw but now, as though it were not, though it had not been he lingers yet, and, lessening to a point, shines like the eye of heaven, then withdraws, and from the zenith to the utmost skirts all is celestial red. The hour is come, when they that sail along the distant seas, languish for home, and they that in the morn said to sweet friends farewell, melt as at parting, when, just gone forth, the pilgrim, if he hears, as now we hear it, echoing round the hill, the bell that seems to mourn the dying day, slackens his pace and sighs, and those he loved loves more than ever. But who feels it not? And well we may, for we are far away,